it's Adam and Mark from iTreatment, and we're here again to do another one in our Eliminating Stigma series. It's been a while. As some of you may remember, Mark and I did a couple of videos back in the fall. Mark was good enough to share his experience with addiction, mental health, and recovery. And then we had our friend Colin do the second video, and that was fantastic. And tonight we've got my friend David going to join us. How you doing, David?
Good, Adam. How about yourself?
Good. Thank you for joining us. And just to remind everybody why we do this. Mark and I was chatting last week, and we really wanted to get that message out there. It seems like there's still a really negative attitude towards addiction, and the services aren't there. I sat down the other day, and off the top of my head, I was able to write out the names of 18 people that I've known in the last 9 years that have died from addiction and mental health. And I don't know anybody. I can't name 18 people that have died of cancer or any other disease in the last 9 years. Yet addiction and mental health still gets nowhere near enough services to help people. So we want to get the message out there so that people can get the message out to the politicians that this is where the funding needs to go. Policies are created in politics, and it's not until politicians believe that the taxpayers want them to put some programs in place to really help people with addiction and mental health before anything's going to happen. So that's my little rant. David, you're from Newfoundland originally.
Yes.
So you knew from the start that you were probably going to end up on a video talking about mental health and addiction someday.
yeah, absolutely. I've ended up on a camera talking about something I've been involved in many, many times, and I'm more than happy to.
Yeah, well, it's good to see you, David. I'll never forget, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your story. And when I reached out to the other day, I'll never forget the day we met and the look in your face and that sort of the hopelessness and the fear and the desperation that it's just incredible to see you here today and to know your story and to hear about how well you're doing makes me really happy. And that's exactly the message of hope that we want to give to people. So what do you remember about the first time we met? Or have you blocked that out of your mind?
I can remember it very vividly. Sitting down in the sunroom at a facility in the Annapolis Valley, not having a clue what I was doing or where I was and who was there and what was going to happen and how the hell anybody was going to be able to help me, right? It was a pretty scary time when I met you. Yeah, it was. I had been very suddenly ripped out of my life, for lack of better words. In Newfoundland, I had run into some trouble and ended up being arrested. And so I walked away from my life in a matter of 24 hours, packed up everything I had, and landed at the Ledge Hill facility in Lawrencetown, as you know. And I still haven't been back to Newfoundland. It's been 755 days sober, so take away 12 days, and that's how long I've been away. So,
wow. So when you were growing up, what were you surrounded by alcohol? Like, what was your experience with alcohol, in the early days before, or drugs and alcohol or any kind of substance, before it became more of an issue for you?
Yes, I certainly grew up around alcohol and around drugs. I have family members that are alcoholics and some that are undiagnosed alcoholics. Quite certain that my mother was an alcoholic. I didn't actually start drinking until later in life. I mean, I think I was in my graduating year of high school before I ever touched anything. Okay. And I never drank excessively. I think maybe because I watched my mother drink excessively so often. And I had moved out west for a couple of years. And while I was out there, as kind of a fluke and a misunderstanding between a friend and I, and me asking him about a drug, I evidently ended up doing cocaine for the first time, and it was merely a miscommunication. I stayed away from drugs pretty good. I smoked a lot of marijuana, and I was in Calgary for 4 years, and I moved home and I went to the agricultural college in Truro. And when I was there, I started drinking a fair bit, quite often. It was 5-6 days a week, probably, realistically. But I was at college, and I was on the rugby team, and we had a woodsman team, and there's always a reason from Tuesday to Sunday, right?
Mhm.
When I moved home from college, I never drank very much. I lived on my own. I worked. I just didn't. A case of beer may have sat in the fridge for 2 or 3 weeks. I met my ex-wife, and well, I had met her. We got married. We ended up with a child, and somewhere around the time my daughter was born, I began drinking daily, pretty much for the most part. And heavy, and that went on for a number of years, and we eventually separated. And then my drug addiction really took off, and my alcohol consumption really took off, because I didn't have anybody keeping me in check. Or I've told many people I'd come home from work. On a good day, I was allowed to have 2 drinks, but on a bad day, I was only ever allowed to have 1 drink, because if it turned into 2 on a bad day, it could easily get out of control. But I didn't have that when I was separated and living on my own again. What I came to find out about myself, amongst the quite a few things, I was diagnosed as a bipolar. And as Adam could probably explain a little bit more, often bipolar will predominantly come out in your late adolescence. And with understanding my disease, a lot of things in my life make sense. When I was on a high, whether it was a week, a month, or 2 years, I was good, and I probably didn't consume as much alcohol. But when I started getting depressed is when I really started to consume alcohol. And of course, after I separated from my wife, things were pretty bad. And I guess that's when I fell into drugs really hard. But it was easy to when I was depressed. But when I was up here on a high, like I said, it could be for a couple of days, it could be for a month. I didn't need alcohol and drugs, but it was the low points that was the risk. There's the low points that I'm lucky that I came out of a few times.
So do you kind of see that as almost like a self-medication?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think that I've met a lot of people in recovery, and the majority of them that I've met weren't alcoholics. They weren't an alcoholic or drug addict first. They had a mental illness first, right? The vast majority of people. I've met so many people that have self-medicated from another disease. And that's exactly what happened to me. Absolutely. So many things in my life make sense. Decisions that I made, or money spending that happened in my business, or just so many things make sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's a it's a survival mechanism, right? Like, it's the solution to the problem, at the end
Yeah,
of the day.
that's right.
So a lot of people don't see
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. Pretty scary.
So it's a really good point, because what we see, as you mentioned, a lot of people, majority of people are self-medicating, but then the drug of choice makes things worse. It temporarily fixes the problem, but it inevitably makes the mental health issue much worse. Hence, the drinking has to get much worse as well.
Did you,
I totally agree. I think I had progressed to a point where on a day-to-day basis, I was lucky to wake up the next day. Lucky I didn't do some very serious harm to myself.
when you mentioned that things kind of, after your daughter was born, that's when things kind of escalated. Was there other stuff going on at that point that kind of opened that can of worms, or do you believe it was more the mental illness coming out at its full capacity? Yeah, what was going on around that time?
Evidently, in the same year my daughter was born, my ex-wife and I were in the process of starting our own business. I grew up on a farm, and we were dairy farmers, and we worked for my family. We were in the process of starting our own business and taking over the dairy, and it was pretty stressful. I mean, my ex-wife was my business partner, my partner in life. We had a newborn. We didn't have much help with the newborn, so things were very, very, very stressful. Very stressful. Yeah, there's so many things came together at one time, but it was inevitable. If it didn't happen then, it was gonna happen, right? Might have been a week down the road. It might have been a year from now, but it was all going to go to hell in a handbasket at some point.
As it generally does, yeah.
Yeah.
It's another great point. What we know about its addiction is always a response to stress, whether it's, and it can be the combined, whether it's the stress of having a mental illness or the stress of starting a new business, having some relationship issues. It's that safe place for us to go.
How long between that point and your treatment center visit? What was the succession or the progression of the use during that period of time?
At that time, I wasn't using drugs at all. Well, I say it, not at all. Maybe once a year, once every couple of years, a buddy would come home and we'd be out somewhere and we'd do a little bit of coke or something. I drank 4 or 5 nights a week, probably too much, maybe more than that. I can't remember really well. This would have been in 2011, but it progressively got worse. There were a couple of years where things were pretty good and I was pretty good, but for the most part, it was increased alcohol consumption. And in the last year that we were together, just at a happenstance, I ended up with drugs one night, and then it turned into every Friday night, be gone by Sunday, and then I'd buy a little bit more on Friday, so it maybe lasted till Tuesday, and then at the end of it, it was pretty consistent. Mm-hmm. But I mean, this would have brought us up to 2018. So it took 7 years to hit rock bottom for me. It took 7 years for me to get help. I don't know when I hit rock bottom, but I hit rock bottom many times in those 7 years. Yeah.
What was the turning point for you, David? What happened that you kind of, as you mentioned, well, might not have been willingly, but you ended up sitting in front of me?
Yeah. I woke up one morning and I got arrested. And that was it. When I landed in the backseat of a cop car, I had given up. Yeah, that was it. I'd had enough. That was evidently it wasn't something that what I was arrested for was later dropped. I'm still dealing with some legal issues, and I'm dealing with them daily, and it's been 2 years now, and it's extremely stressful, but I manage it sober. But when I got arrested, I can remember when I left that day, there was a number of police officers that I knew as a volunteer firefighter, and they all put their hand on my shoulder and told me it was going to be okay. I was going to get help. And when I landed at the lockup that night, I knew one of the guards there personally. I didn't know that that person worked there. And, you know, they were very supportive, and they looked out for me in my time there. You know, I later found out why they woke me up many times during the night when I was on medication and everything else. They didn't want me to seize. But, you know, they just like being in the hospital, being in lockup for those 6-7 days. The guards were nurses. They kept me alive. They really, really did. I remember my first night in there, I called my lawyer, and my father was halfway around the world, and I said, you have to get a hold of him because I need help. And if you get me out of here tomorrow, I'm not going home. I need a hospital. I need to go somewhere. That was it.
Was that the first time you reached out for help, or were there the first time help was presented to you, but before that, have you ever tried to reach out for help or navigate the system, or?
No, I never. And in hindsight, it wouldn't have done much good, and I'll explain on that. I think there was a lot of times I indirectly asked for help or reached out to my ex. I think there's many times I could have been helped, and maybe I'm wrong. I was a pretty stubborn person, and I was pretty good at denying my addictions, but I think there could have been things that could have been done. I think there's people that probably could have convinced me, and everybody knew it was no secret. That's the thing about it, right? Mm-hmm. But the day I was arrested, because of my situation and my state of mind, I was brought to the hospital for an assessment. And I had a psychological assessment while I was there. I wasn't real honest in that assessment because I had been warned, given advice by my lawyer, that anything I said to a doctor while in custody was privileged information to the police. It wasn't doctor-patient confidentiality. So I wasn't honest and truthful with them. But I had asked for help. I had asked for a recovery or treatment, whatever they had to, had to offer. I was told there was a wait period. This was in March 2018. I left Ledge Hill on May the 5th. And I received a letter in August from my mail in Newfoundland that they had a spot for me in October, November, maybe October. So wow. I landed at the hospital in March, and I was drinking 100, 120, 140, doesn't matter. It was over 100 ounces of whiskey a week, and probably doing an 8-ball, if not 2 a week, and suffering from mental illness, undiagnosed. And I landed there and I asked for help, and I got a letter 5 months later that they could get me in somewhere in 3 months. You know, wow. That's not much of a system. No, and that's why we lose so many people.
Yeah. And think about the people that are currently in the system, in the criminal system, in the courts, that had reached for help or wanted some help. But if you can imagine how much trouble a guy can get into in 11 months or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, untreated, and then they blame you.
Yeah. Those 11 months would have been the end of me. Yeah. If I had been let out, or I didn't check myself into a institution and have that available to me, I highly doubt I would have made it to October.
So you showed up in the Annapolis Valley, the epitome of hopelessness and despair. At what point did you start to have some hope? When did it turn around for you? And do you remember, was there anything that had happened that you thought, you know what, I got this?
It took a while. I always thought I was crazy. I always thought there's no way someone thinks the things that I think, you know. My mind goes a mile a minute all the time. There's no slowing it down. I can manage it, but it can go. If I wanted to let it go, it goes. And I always thought I was crazy. No one else is like this. When I started to realize, I realized I wasn't crazy when I read a book that you had given to me, actually, Adam. It was something about anger by a doctor in the States. I can't remember the name of the book, but I realized reading that book that I'm an angry person. I don't get angry. I am angry. There is a difference. But there was a lot of literature about mental illnesses and different mental illnesses and ADHD and bipolar and this and this and this and so on. And so I started to see things that matched, that I could relate to. I'm like this because of this. And I'm not the only one. And I think when I realized I wasn't the only one, I let people start helping me. I wasn't scared that I was the oddball, and it was something they hadn't seen before.
Yeah. How's life now, David?
Life's good. Life is really good. 755 days sober. I'm not keeping track though. I have a week-old baby boy, second child. I still deal with a lot of legal issues, but I have a great job. I have an amazing employer, very supportive of me, very supportive of my situation, very understanding of the situation. I have good friends that I work with. I have a lot of contacts I can reach out to when I'm having a hard day, bad day. I have all the tools I need to take care of me, take care of myself. I think I'm a much better father to this baby boy than I was to my baby girl. Mm-hmm. Sadly.
Yeah. You both are very lucky to have you.
Absolutely.
David, you're an inspiration. There's no way that anyone struggling with mental health or addiction is not going to watch this video and get hope from it. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time and to do this with us. It means a lot.
Yeah, I'm very happy to. When you asked me a while ago, Adam, I'm happy to share my story. I've said this at a few meetings. I grew up in the Salvation Army. Now, not that I'm much anything to call a Christian, but I have heard a scattered sermon in my day. And there's always a sermon that stuck in my mind. And in the last 755 days, I've thought about it pretty well daily. But the sermon was, no matter how dark of a hole you're down in, one little pinhole can allow enough light in that you can see. Yeah. The deepest, darkest hole, it only needs to open up that much to let in enough light.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, I can relate with your story myself. So, I guarantee you it'll touch a lot of others for sure. So thanks so much for coming on and sharing. And it's been a pleasure to hear it.
Happy to. Yeah. I really appreciate the opportunity. I really, really do. I love what you're doing. And, if it helps one person, it was worth the hour's time, right? I mean, that's all it takes.
Absolutely. And I'll guarantee you did that. Thanks again, David. Best wishes to you and your baby and your daughter and your dad and your partner. I could not be happier for you. I know you've got a wonderful life up there, and I know, I'm just really, really happy for you. Thank you very much, Adam. I appreciate it.
Yeah, congratulations on the new arrival, and it's great to see you. Great to see the big smile on your face, and man, things can change in 755 days.
Yeah, that's right. Things can change in a day.
Yeah, 100%. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, guys.
Wish you another 2 for, and I'll keep 1 for myself.
Right on.
Fantastic. All the best.
All the best.